All right, let's talk about something that sits on a real legal and ethical knife edge. What happens when a criminal case, a serious one, gets tangled up with a private deal? Does a checkbook get to have the final say on justice? So picture this. There's a terrible accident, maybe on a busy road or a construction site, and tragically, someone loses their life. The person responsible is charged, but then they offer the victim's family money as compensation. And the family, for whatever reason, maybe they need the support, maybe they just can't face a long trial, they accept it. They tell the court, we don't want to proceed. So, is that it? Is the case just over? That's the exact dilemma we're getting into. This is where a family's private grief and decision-making crashes right into the public's interest in the law. So here's how this usually plays out, step by step. First, there's a death caused by someone's negligence. Because a law was broken, the state steps in and charges that person, usually under Section 304A of the Indian Penal Code. Then comes the offer of money, the settlement, which the family accepts. And then they go to court and essentially ask for everything to be dropped. This is the moment where things get really, really complicated. And why is it so complicated? Well, it's because there's a major conflict baked right into the legal code itself. It's a fascinating tug of war between two different legal ideas. Okay, so check this out. On one hand, you have a very strict rule. Section 304A is what's called non-compoundable. That's just a legal way of saying you can't make a private deal to make this go away. The law sees this as a crime against society as a whole, not just a personal matter. But on the other hand, you have this incredibly flexible power. Section 482 gives high courts what's called an inherent power to just end a case, to quash it, if they feel it's the right thing to do to secure justice. So you've got this rule that says absolutely no deals, and this power that says, well, maybe sometimes. Now, to understand how a judge even begins to sort this out, we have to talk about a really key concept: gross negligence. You see, for someone to be convicted of a crime here, it's not enough to show they just made a mistake. The courts have been very clear that the negligence has to be gross. We're talking about a level of recklessness so high that it shows a complete and utter disregard for the safety of others. This isn't a simple error, it's a much, much higher bar. As you can probably guess, this tension has created two very different ways of thinking within the courts themselves. Let's look at the two sides of the argument. First up, you have the hardline view. The Punjab and Haryana High Court put it plainly: allowing these kinds of deals is a dangerous trend. The logic here is pretty straightforward. If we let people with money just pay their way out of a criminal charge for causing a death, what kind of message does that send? It suggests justice is for sale. This viewpoint says the crime is public and you can't just settle it with a private payment. But then you've got the other side of the coin, a much more pragmatic view. The Delhi High Court basically asked, what is the point of continuing a trial if the main witnesses, the victim's own family, have settled and won't cooperate with the prosecution anymore? The odds of actually getting a conviction become, as they put it, remote and bleak. So forcing someone through a trial that's almost guaranteed to fail isn't justice, it's just pointless harassment. So how does a judge decide which path to take? Is it just a flip of a coin? No, not at all, actually. They have to perform a really careful balancing act, and they're guided by a pretty clear set of principles. It's almost like a mental checklist. First, they look at the crime itself. Was this an act of extreme, gross negligence, or something closer to a tragic mistake? Second, they look into their crystal ball a bit. With this settlement in place, is a conviction even realistic anymore? Third, they think about fairness. Is continuing this case just going to be a waste of time and an unfair burden on the accused? And finally, they have to answer the biggest question of all. In this specific situation, what does securing the ends of justice really, truly mean? So when a judge says the chance of conviction is remote and bleak, what are they actually seeing? Well, they're looking for major red flags in the prosecution's case. Things like witness statements that completely contradict each other, or maybe the main eyewitness just doesn't seem reliable at all. Sometimes there's just not enough hard evidence. Saying someone was driving at high speed often isn't enough on its own. And of course, the biggest factor is often the simplest. The family has settled, and they're not going to testify against the accused. This table really drives the point home. It all comes down to the details of each specific case. Look at the Bhajan Lal Sharma case. Construction workers died. The court said, no way are we quashing this. It would send a terrible message to irresponsible builders. But then you have the Babu Khan and Jaspriya Bahasan cases. In those situations, the courts looked at the weak evidence and decided that pushing forward with the trial was pointless. So you have the same criminal charge, but completely different facts leading to totally different outcomes.
And all of this brings us to the final and maybe the toughest question at the very heart of this issue.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that there is no simple black and white rule. The law itself creates this tension on purpose. It forces judges to use their discretion to really dig into the messy human details of every single tragedy and make a tough call on what justice really looks like when a life has been lost forever.
Which leaves us all with this final thought to chew on. When a tragedy like this happens, what does justice truly demand? Is it about punishment at all costs, even if a conviction is a long shot? Or is it about finding a practical outcome that provides for the grieving family and lets everyone involved try to move on? The law doesn't hand us an easy answer. And, maybe it shouldn't.